So, hello, good morning. I am Mariclipsi Cabala, Maritime 11, and this is my vlog about Carlos P. Romulo. So, who is Carlos P. Romulo? Carlos P. Romulo is a Filipino diplomat, statesman, soldier, journalist, and an author. Carlos P. Romulo, in full name Carlos Peña Romulo, born on January 14, 1989. Carlos Romulo died on December 15, 1985 in Manila. Carlos P. Romulo, in 1899 to 1985, was an author and the foremost diplomat of the Philippines. He was the Filipino journalist to win the Pulitzer Prize and the first Asian to serve as President of the UN General Assembly. And he also gained prominence as America's most trusted Asian spokesman. Carlos P. Romulo, his father, Gregorio, was a Filipino guerrilla fighter with the Philippine Revolutionary Government of Emilio Aguinaldo during the Filipino-American War. One said, Romulo claimed to have witnessed his grandfather tortured by the water cure administered by American soldiers. After early schooling in Tarlac, Romulo entered the University of the Philippines, where he received a bachelor degree in 1918. After getting a Master Arts from Columbia University in 1921, he returned to work as professional of English and chairman of the English Department of the University of the Philippines in 1923 to 1928. Romulo became editor-in-chief of TVT Publications in 1931 and publisher and editor of the Philippines Herald in 1933 to 1941. In 1929, he was appointed regent of the University of the Philippines. Previously, in 1922 to 1925, he had served as secretary to Senate President of Manuel Quezon and as a member of the Philippine Independence Mission headed by Quezon. Romulo belonged to the elite, the oligarchic stratum of the Filipino ruling class, by virtue of his role as defender of the interests of the propertist minority. In 1941, Romulo received the coveted Pulitzer Prize for the series of pioneering articles on the Southeast Asia political situation, in which he recorded his extensive travels in China, Burma, Thailand, Indonesia, and elsewhere. In 1941, with the outbreak of World War II, Romulo joined the staff of General Douglas MacArthur as press relations officer. He also served as Secretary of Information and Public Relations in Quezon's wartime cabinet in 1943 to 1944. He retreated with MacArthur from Bataan to Corregidor and then to Australia in 1941 to 1942. While in Corregidor, he broadcast for the Voice of Freedom. He served as aide-de-camp to MacArthur and rose from the rank of Colonel 1942 to Brigadier General 1944. In 1945, Romulo acted as Philippine delegate to the United Nations Organization Conference in San Francisco. He was Philippine ambassador to the United Nations from 1946 to 1954. He distinguished himself as the first Asian to become president of the UN General Fourth Session. It was on September 20, 1949. In 1950 to 1951, Romulo acted as Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippine Republic and from 1952, with some interruptions, as Philippine Ambassador to the United States. After serving as President of the University of the Philippines and Secretary of Education 1963 to 1968, Romulo was appointed by President Marcos to the post of Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Romulo was the recipient of more than 100 honorary doctorates, awards, and medals given by the American and Asian universities, organizations, and foreign governments. Carlos P. Romulo speech about I am a Filipino. Let's all watch the video.
I am a Filipino, inheritor of a glorious past, hostage to the uncertain future. As such, I must prove equal to a twofold task: the task of meeting my responsibility to the past, and the task of performing my obligation to the future. I sprung from a hardy race, child of many generations removed of ancient Malayan pioneers. Across the centuries, the memory comes rushing back to me of brown-skinned men putting out to sea in ships that were as frail as their hearts were stout. Over the sea I see them come, borne upon the billowing wave and the whistling wind, carried upon the mighty swell of hope, hope in the free abundance of new land that was to be their home and their children's forever. This is the land they sought and found, every inch of shore that their eyes first set upon, every hill and mountain that beckoned to them with a green and purple invitation, every mile of rolling plain that their view encompassed, every river and lake that promise a plentiful living and the fruitfulness of commerce, is a hallowed spot to me. By the strengths of their hearts and hands, by every right of law, human and divine, this land and all the appurtenances thereof, the black and fertile soil, the seas and lakes and rivers teeming with fish, the forest with their inexhaustible wealth in wildlife and timber, the mountains with their bowels swollen with minerals, the whole of this rich and happy land has been, for centuries without number, the land of my fathers. This land I receive in trust from them, and in trust will pass it to my children, and so on until the world no more. I am a Filipino. In my blood runs the immortal seed of heroes, a seed that flowered down the centuries in deeds of courage and defiance. In my veins yet pulses the same hot blood that sent Lapu-Lapu to battle against the alien foe that drove Diego Silang and Dagohoy into rebellion against the foreign oppressor. That seed is immortal. It is the self-same seed that flowered in the heart of Jose Rizal that morning in Bagumbayan when the Valley of Shots put an end to all that was mortal of him and made his spirit deathless forever. The same that flowered in the hearts of Bonifacio in Balintawak, of Gregorio del Pilar at Tired Pass, of Antonio Luna at Kalumpit, that bloomed in flowers of frustration in the sad heart of Emilio Aguinaldo at Palanan, and yet burst forth royally again in the proud heart of Manuel L. Quezon when he stood at last on the threshold of ancient Malacanang Palace in the symbolic act of possession and racial vindication. The seed I bear within me is an immortal seed. It is the mark of my manhood, the symbol of dignity as human being. Like the seeds that were once buried in the tomb of Tutankhamen many thousand years ago, it shall grow and flower and bear fruit again, It is the insignia of my race, and my generation is but a stage in an ending search of my people for freedom and happiness. I am a Filipino, child of the marriage of the East and the West. The East with its languor and mysticism, its passivity and endurance, was my mother, and my sire was the West that came thundering across the seas with the cross and sword and the machine. I am of the East, an eager participant of its struggles for liberation from the imperialist yoke. But I also know that the East must awake from its centuries sleep, shape of the lethargy that has bound his limbs, and start moving where destiny awaits. For I, too, am of the West, and the vigorous peoples of the West have destroyed forever the peace and quiet that once were ours. I can no longer live being apart from those world now trembles to the roar of bomb and cannon shot. For no man and no nation is an island, but a part of the main. There is no longer any East and West, only individuals and nations making those momentous choices that are hinges upon which history revolves. At the vanguard of progress in this part of the world I stand, a forlorn figure in the eyes of some, but not one defeated and lost. For through the thick, interlacing branches of habit and custom above me, I have seen the light of the sun, and I know that it is good. I have seen the light of justice and equality and freedom, and my heart has been lifted by the vision of democracy. And I shall not rest until my land and my people shall have been blessed by these, beyond the power of any man or nation to subvert or destroy. I am a Filipino, and this is my inheritance. What pledge shall I give that I may prove worthy of my inheritance? I shall give the pledge that has come ringing down the corridors of the centuries, and it shall be compounded of the joyous cries of my Malayan forebears when they first saw the contours of this land loom before their eyes, of the battle cries that have resounded in every field of combat from Mactan to Tiran Pass, of the voices of my people when they sing. Land of the morning, child of the sun returning, near shall invaders trample thy sacred shore. Out of the lush green of these 7,000 isles, out of the heartstring of 100 million people all vibrating to one song, I shall weave the mighty fabric of my pledge. Out of the songs of the farmers at sunrise when they go to labor in the fields, out of the sweat of the heart-beaten pioneers in Mali and Coronadal, out of the silent endurance of stevedores at the piers and the ominous grumbling of peasants Pampanga, out of the first cries of babies, newly born, and the lullabies that mothers sing, out of the crushing gears and the whine of turbines in the factories, out of the crunch of plows of turning the earth, out of the limitless patience of teachers in the classrooms and doctors in the clinics, out of the tramp of soldiers marching, I shall make the pattern of my pledge. I am a Filipino, born of freedom, and I shall not